The experience of depression, this is a very good place to start for both sufferers and supporters. For depression sufferers, this will give you words to articulate your struggle, which is not always easy to do when you're depressed. Being depressed is not as straightforward as my throat feels itchy and it hurts when I cough, or my leg is broken, the pain is terrible. Depression is different. Expressing the struggle in itself is hard. As Mark Mayno puts it, I am looking for words for those who can't imagine the words for themselves. And for supporters, this question is even more critical. Christians, we worship a gracious and compassionate God. We want to be compassionate like God when we approach the depressed. We want to be brought into their story. We want to carry the burden together with them. Unfortunately, for many of us, we often make the mistake of assuming that we understand when actually we don't. So we need to be humbled. We need to ask and learn, and asking, what is it like? What is the experience of depression like? Well, depression is darkness and hopelessness. While anxiety says, I'm terrified something bad is going to happen to something I love, depression says, I'm terrified something bad is going to happen to something I love, and now I'm sure it is going to happen. I'm doomed. While anxiety says, it may or may not happen, but I'm feeling anxious, depression says, it is certainly going to happen. It is hopeless. When you're depressed, you have no energy. Your tank is empty. You can't pull yourself out of bed because you have nothing to be looking forward to. No reason to get up. What used to motivate you and excite you no longer does, even though you remember that they used to. You're drained of your emotion when you're depressed. You feel nothing, no joy. Whatever happens in the day for you, it is all flat. Because depression is not moved by events. People may care for you. They may even organize a surprise for you. You do appreciate them, but you just feel flat and numbed. So you barely respond. It feels like overnight, life just got sucked out of you. You are suddenly dried up, nothing left. You feel confused. Everything in life is muddled up. It doesn't make sense. And there's no point to everything. And that's why you can feel suicidal. Listen to how Charles Spurgeon, a great 19th century English preacher, described his own depression. He says, you may be surrounded with all the comforts of life, and yet be in wretchedness more gloomy than death, if the spirits are depressed. You may have no outward cause whatever for sorrow, and yet if the mind is dejected, the brightest sunshine will not relieve your gloom. In the midst of depression, a Christian can hardly imagine anything good. You say, God is good, He is faithful, He is love. But I'm sorry, I hear you. I know that. But all I feel right now is that God is 1,000,000 miles away. So supporters can often find themselves shocked because it seems like their friend just turned into a stubborn atheist overnight. And if the strugglers can confess that God is good, then God is being good to everyone else but them. Listen to William Cowper, 18th century poet and hymn writer. You might not have heard of him, but I'm sure you have heard of his good friend, John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace. Cowper said this: They think that he who once had possession of divine truth should never finally lose it. I admit the certainty of this reasoning in every case but my own. And why not my own? Well, God's ways are mysterious. He need not give account of his matters. There is a mystery in my destruction, and in time it shall be explained. You see, Cowper affirms the doctrine of the perseverance of the saints, and he doesn't question the reality of his conversion. But in his depression, he thinks he is the lone exception in the entire universe. That even though he was once an elect, now he's a reprobate. And he doesn't question God why, for he knows God gives no account. Do you see that? In the midst of a depressive episode, that's how dark and how bleak Cowper's world can be. Depression is different from other sicknesses in that its effects entangle with your spiritual life. Imagine yourself looking normal, but actually you are sleep deprived. You are always tired, always low in mood, struggling to focus, and always indecisive. Now, how would that affect your personal prayer and Bible reading, your CG and your Sundays? And when your motivation is low, when you lose interest in things, how would evangelism, encouraging one another, running the good race look like? And how would they sound to you? You are a Christian, aren't you? But you are missing church and CG, not praying, not reading the Bible, avoiding people, sleeping too much, eating too much, not making use of every single opportunity. Would God love someone who can't concentrate in sermons and struggle to pray? You see, all of these are common inappropriate guilt depressed Christians struggle with, on top of the low self-esteem, sense of worthlessness that they are feeling. Now, of course, there is a spectrum from mild to severe depression. Not everyone who is depressed feels everything that I've just painted for you. I've also not given you a comprehensive list of symptoms for depression. I'll give you a link later where you can read up further on that. I will also include an excerpt from DSM-5 in that link as well. But I hope I have given you enough for now. My aim is really just to move you a little bit closer to understanding the anguish and the pain of depression, just to feel it. In a nutshell, this is how Ed Welch puts it. He says, when you suffer depression, you are artificially being pushed down and down and down and down, and being kept there artificially in that dark and irrational place. And that is how depression feels like.